be born and raised on a farm. How many farmers do I have in here? How many people live on a farm? A couple? All right. I was born and raised on a farm, and much of what I learned in life, I learned on the farm. And most of that came from my dad. Now, my dad is not Ward Cleaver. My dad is not, Mr. Weir? What was the other guy's name? Mr. Weir. I don't remember ever having a sit-down conversation with my dad where he explained, a life lesson to me, either at the kitchen table or the living room or my bedroom before I went to bed. I don't remember those kinds of things about my dad. But what I remember about my dad was how he led by example and how he taught by example. And my dad was a farmer. My dad died a few years ago, and we had an auction at the farm to sell off the farm equipment and close the farm operation. And the only thing I kept of my dad's was this iron bar. And he just look heavy. Take a look at that one. A little bit of weight to that thing, huh? I learned a lot about life watching Dad use this iron bar. We used it to, we'd pick rock to get ready for the spring, and we'd go out in the field and pick rock. Sometimes we'd have a rock that we could see the top of the rock was in the ground. We couldn't get it out, so we'd use the iron bar we'd maybe set another rock a foot or so away from the bar, and we'd stick the bar as far as we could under the rock that was under the ground and use the other rock as leverage to pop that rock out of the ground. We used it for something like that. I remember when we had to hook up farm machine, for example, if we had to hook the baler up to the tractor or the corn sheller up to the tractor or a wagon up to the truck, sometimes it was very heavy for me to lift the hitch up to the level so it could get hooked into the tractor, and we'd sometimes use this bar to help lift a piece of heavy equipment high enough to hook it up to a tractor so we could move the piece of equipment. Another time I remember, we had a modest farm. We had 500 or 600 acres. I think we had 3 or 4 tractors during my time on the farm, and we'd have to use our tractors for lots of different things. And sometimes in the spring and the fall, we would get our tractors ready to till the ground, either in preparation for planting in the spring or tilling the ground after harvest. And we'd have to put dual wheels on the tractors, and we needed to tighten those bolts very tightly so the wheel stayed on. And I remember we put the wheel on, we tighten the bolt as tight as we could get it with our hands with that wrench, but then we'd use this bar, we'd prop it in there and use it as extra torque to make sure those bolts got tight. And then, of course, sometimes we'd have to do the same thing in reverse to loosen the bolts. And so this bar showed me how my dad went about his business and how he could use limited resources to accomplish a lot of different things. And this will always have a special place in my heart for how I learned things about life. And my dad, as I said, he wasn't the kind of guy who would sit you down at the kitchen table and teach you or tell you one of life's lessons, but he was a good man. He got up early in the morning, he worked late at night, and he worked hard at what he did. And while I'm not a farmer today, I think you'll usually see my light on pretty early at the office, and it might be on pretty late at night. I learned my work ethic from my dad and how he went about, how he approached his work. But it went beyond just work. A lot about how I care about the church. Christian mentioned my involvement here in the church. I think a lot of that is a result of what my dad did. My mom and dad were the Sunday school superintendents for over 30 years at the church I grew up on, and I don't have one single memory about Sunday school or confirmation that doesn't include my mom or my dad. And whether it is leading opening devotions or teaching a Sunday school class or having Sunday school or Sunday school Christmas program practice, all of those things involve my parents. And so as I got married and had kids and brought them into the church, I remembered how important it was to have parents who were involved in their kids' lives, and I tried to honor my parents by doing that same sort of thing here at church. And then even stewardship, how my dad spent this time, as I mentioned, the time he gave to the church, with his time and his talents, but also his treasures and what he shared financially with the church. I've learned a lot about stewardship from my parents as well. So, and then even beyond the church, from a community involvement standpoint, my dad was very active in farm cooperatives. He served on the Jeffers Farmers Co-op Elevator Board for many years. He served on the board of South Central Electric Co-op. It's based right here in St. James. And he was on he was a founding member of the cooperative that formed and opened the ethanol plant in Bingham Lake. And so co-ops were very important to Dad, and that just, meant bringing a bunch of people with a common goal together to create a good that those folks on their own couldn't accomplish. And that has meant a lot to me in my life as I get involved in community efforts that are important to our way of life in a community like St. James. And so this bar, while I don't use it very much, I certainly don't use it in banking, and I don't use it very much at home. I always know where it is. I always keep it handy, and every time I see it, I think of my dad. So that's one of the ways I honor my father.